So you know what I actually haven't done that's been requested for a while? Cover the races native to Tamriel. And since we are all stuck in place currently, it's time to get into that deep lore, my guy. This particular species is said to be much like the Argonians and is actually considered native to the continent of Tamriel. This species of cat, known as Khajiit, which is also the name of my cat, typically stayed near or in the forests of the continent prior to the arrival of Min and Mer. Mer being the elves if you aren't familiar with them. However, due to the adaptability of this species and their subsequent takeover of their homeland, they would be pushed into the deserts of elsewhere where they would continue to thrive. So in today's episode, we will cover the beast folk, or at least part of that designation, and discuss the monumental changes in morphology between the house cat versions to the tigers to the bipedal Khajiit. So first things first, what are the Khajiit? The Khajiit is a collective term for the cat people of Nirn. This includes all different varieties so long as the parents are Khajiits themselves and they can trace their lineage. The random saber-toothed tigers that you run into concerning Skyrim are not assumed to be a part of that Khajiit lineage. These cat-like people are known for their high intelligence and agility. In fact, you are highly likely to find Khajiit within the Dark Brotherhood for this exact reason. Utilizing their natural stealth abilities, problem-solving skills, as well as their natural offensive claws, they can take out entire groups of other species, assuming they aren't overwhelmed. These traits, however, also have led them into some other trades that are probably not as desirable. Most of these cats are usually working within the Thieves Guild to utilize their natural stealth, but they also make extremely good warriors due to their strength and size depending on when they were born, but we will get to that a little later on. But due to their variability, they could become warriors, which also meant that they could become good pirates as well due to their propensity to already be thieves. But this is where the Khajiit begin to run into issues with other races of Tamriel. Due to their natural lifestyle and abilities, the Khajiit are usually targeted even if they are innocent of their crimes. Because of things like the skooma trade, which stems from refined moon sugar, which has drug-like effects on other races, this has given their species a bad name overall. These problems, coupled with the Khajiits traveling across the continent in caravans, has led to some pretty heinous overall discrimination of the cat species. In a lot of cases, such as in Cyrodiil, this isn't as pronounced as it's sort of the heart of Tamriel with mingling of all races, but in places like Skyrim, which only belongs to the Nords I hear, the cool cats and kittens are forced to stay outside of the city walls, or those limits, for fear that if they were let in, they would ransack the town before anyone noticed. Because of this, in a lot of areas, you can see Khajiit camped out near the entrances to cities looking to trade. As stated previously, the cats of Tamriel originally were natives to the continent, having an entirely separate evolutionary path from men and elves. The origin, however, is still fairly debated as to which is the actual case. In some instances, it's said that the Khajiit originate from some ancient feline that was marginally intelligent and that may be kin to the current day Khajiit. This is backed by the interpretation of an encounter by the Aldmir when they came across 4- and 2-legged demons who appeared to be ancient Khajiit. The other theory is the complete opposite. This is more based on the fact that the Azuras gave rise to the Khajiit. If this were true, then this means that the Khajiit are in fact not native to Tamriel and are actually cousins of the Bosmer. This would have likely happened after the Azura took to the forest and turned to many beast forms. Which is more likely of the two in terms of the explanation? It is likely that the Khajiit did evolve from the demons as they were perceived based on that fact that demons do exist in this universe. And the idea of them coming from the Azur is unlikely, seeing as the morphological changes would be too massive and great to overcome. Not to mention, the morphological changes that we do see in the species simply based on moon positioning is not displayed in any other of the races of men or elves, and as such would not be exhibited in the Khajiit if the relation was there. But speaking of moon positioning, what exactly am I referring to? Well, with the Khajiit, the moon's current cycle has a massive impact on how the Khajiit will actually look and form. Like astrology in human society, but with actual measurable impacts. Whether the moon be full, waning, waxing, or new, this will influence the morphology and can create a bipedal cat from 2 quadrupedal cats. So let's take a look at the possibilities on these physiological presentations. There are 4 main stages of moon cycles. Nirn has 2 moons that will influence this, the lunar lattices of Master and Secunda, and because of this, their appearance can vary quite dramatically. Some can actually appear to look like house cats, while others resemble hulking bipedal jaguars, and even some being almost indistinguishable from men and elves, which may be where the idea of them evolving from elves actually comes from. But the generalized breakdown is during a full moon of Master, they will appear as large quadrupeds, like the big cats here on Earth. During a waxing moon, which refers to the moon becoming more full, they will have a large bipedal stance, which is typical of the Khajiit that we see in Oblivion and Skyrim. During the new moon, you can expect a Khajiit to be a smaller biped, which will be more lithe and shorter from the standard playable Khajiits. And during the waning phase of the moon, in which the moon is heading towards a new moon phase, you can expect them to be a small quadruped like a house cat. With these 4 phases fleshed out, this isn't the end, however, because the second moon also has a fairly large impact on how the Khajiit will look, with a further breakdown of each creature. Secunda, which is Nirn's second moon, will more subtly influence the shape and morphology of the Khajiit, leading to the largest of large cats to the smallest of small cats. It also has an impact on creating cats who are more bestial looking versus more human looking. In total, there are roughly 16 breeds of Khajiit possible, with a theorized 20 breeds in total. Due to their genetic similarities, they're able to interbreed with one another. However, simply by the size of the animal, it may be infeasible for the largest Khajiit to interact with the smallest Khajiit, unless they're really into that sort of thing. It can be assumed to a certain degree that intelligence amongst the Khajiit would also vary due to more or less their bestial nature displayed and relative brain size. So let's get into those breeds, shall we? First, let's discuss the Master full moon phase, which we know produces large quadrupeds. During the Secunda full moon as well, you can expect a Senchi. A Senchi is a fierce tiger-like Khajiit, not unlike the Pomerat, and is roughly the size of an Altmer when standing on its hind legs. The Senchi is also one of the few Khajiit to be used as a steed by other Khajiit. This is thought to be voluntary, but it's actually unconfirmed. During the Secunda waxing phase, we get the Senchi Rat. The Senchi Rat is by far the largest known Khajiit breed, standing at twice the size of any Altmer. These Khajiit receive the term battle cats for their use as steeds, though they are slower than their Senchi counterparts. Essentially, if you are this version, congrats, you are basically only being used for war. During the new moon phase of Secunda, which I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that different every single time, you become a Palmer. These cats can share the appearance of a tiger and are usually just as large and fearsome, but presumably they are not as large as the battle cats that are ridden into battle. During the Secunda waning, you have the Pomerat, similar in appearance to the Palmer, but much larger and fiercer. And as the Master Moon begins to wax, we see larger bipeds than quadrupeds, but clearly there would be a tipping point in this cycle. But while waxing, we get 4 different types of Khajiit. All are able to utilize swords, axes, hammers, bows, whatever they like. And also due to their bipedal nature, they display more intelligence and can utilize magic, or magicka, whichever, or mana if you play World of Warcraft. Basically anything that uses fire, frost, electricity, healing, they can use that. And this actually, though, goes back to the evolution on our own planet as well. Due to bipedalism, the skull is located directly over the spine and is supported by bone rather than muscle. Because of this, brains could get larger without putting stress on the neck. And then we also see this in the Khajiit that interact with other species. During the Secunda full phase, these are typically the Khajiits you will see all throughout Cyrodiil and Skyrim. Relatively common overall, these creatures are larger and stronger than the Suthre Rat. They wield sharp claws and can be physically imposing. Able to take down other races with a few swipes, they are also hominid enough to interact and speak. During the Secunda waxing phase, Cathray Rat maintain their agility, but are larger and more powerful than the standard Khajiit. These individuals will typically resemble a jaguar and are often referred to as jaguar men. These particular Khajiit make excellent warriors due to their strength they possess and their natural offensive capabilities. During the new phase, not much is known of these Khajiit. Due to their elusive nature, they remain somewhat a mystery and reside within the southern marshes and Tinmar Forest. But due to this phase, they would likely be your run-of-the-mill Khajiit that is normal sized. Lastly, during the waning Secunda phase, we have the Toje Rat. They are known to be larger than a Khajiit that is born under the new moon cycle, but apart from that, just like with the new moon cycle Khajiit, little is known about them. As the Master Moon enters its new moon phase, it will produce the smaller bipeds, and this has an added effect. They will look somewhat similar to a normal elf or man, and through the second moon cycles, they may even be indistinguishable. During the Secunda full moon phase, a Khajiit becomes an Ohms. They appear almost indistinguishable from that of a Bosmer, with the only difference being that the Ohms are shorter. This is likely where the idea comes from that they may have originated from the Bosmer as opposed to evolving from a separate animal line. The Secunda waxing phase gives us the Ohms Rat. Similar in physiology and appearance to the Ohms, however, they will be closer in height to that of men and will still retain their golden fur and tail. Because of this remaining tail, they are more easily distinguished as Khajiit rather than an elf. During the Secunda new moon phase, you have the Suthe. These are similar in height to the Ohms, but are much more cat-like in terms of features. These include a high set of ears and facial features which look very much so similar to cats. They have a long tail and digitigrade legs to boot. The Secunda waning phase gives us the Suthe Rat. These are similar in terms of features, however, they are taller roughly to that of the height of a man. And these particular cats are most common breed in Morrowind at the current point in time. And finally, sweet Jesus, we come to the last cycle. During the Master waning phase, this produces the smallest of Khajiit with further influence by the second moon. These are usually the small quadrupeds of the species. During the Secunda full moon cycle, middle, we get the Alfiq. Small in stature, they are quadrupeds. In fact, I have one of these in my house, so would you just look at them? I mean, really, just look at this cat. This is a pretty good looking Khajiit, if I do say so myself. They are digitigrade in terms of leg structuring and sometimes are friendly. They can be fat or slonky. This one in particular is fat. Her name is Mrs. Kitty, and she's pretty great because she's also a mini panther. Anyhow, enough about my cats. These are the smallest of Khajiit and are mostly companions to the larger Khajiit. They do retain more intellect than regular house cats, however, it is not really known how intelligent they actually are. During the Secunda waxing phase, Alfiq rot are presumed to be larger than that of Alfiq. However, little is known about them. But we can probably just assume it would be like comparing a lynx to a house cat. The Secunda new phase, and bear with me because I've never actually said these words before, gives us the Daji. Also larger in stature than the Alfiq, they are more lanky and lightweight as they are less stocky. These particular Khajiit will reside in the branches of trees. And finally, the Secunda waning phase brings us to the Daji rot. They're only slightly larger than the Daji and will reside in the treetops with their cousin. But wait, there's more! A mystery third moon is known to show up in a line from time to time. Any Khajiit born during this time is said to be a main. These particular Khajiit are the spiritual leaders and can bring peace to the providence only for a short time. Only one main is said to be alive at a time and is actually just a reincarnation. This rare event basically leads to a Chewbacca-looking Khajiit covered in a thick, large mane. However, many others are definitely born during this time, so out of respect, they will actually end up shaving their mane. I guess it really just comes down to the first sort of cat to be born with this mane is considered to be the actual mane. Anyhow, based on these changes to the body and how huge of an impact it is, it's surprising that the Khajiit are able to produce viable offspring with one another. It would appear that there are a base set of genes that would be responsible for the creature overall, such as with breeding, but that a secondary set of genes which is influenced by the gravity of moons and their cycles, much like how tides are influenced, and this would cause the morphological changes in the Khajiit race. That being said, how might this be possible? Well, first thing I want to point out, there is, as we know now, no significant influence that our moon plays on our bodies in terms of like how we turn out, mental faculties, things like that. There are a lot of anecdotal evidence out there, but any studies that have been done have shown you're still the complete same during any moon cycle. Most, if not all, accounts have been dismissed or outright disproven, from the things such as lunacy to blood loss to sleep deprivation to positive ions interacting with the human body, but we'll just move on. However, from an evolutionary standpoint, the moon has had a massive impact on the human race. For instance, if the moon was full, it was bright enough for humans to possibly hunt in. But this would also put our ancestors in danger if, say, it was a new moon, because it would be completely dark outside, meaning that ancient humans needed to get to safety. And then over millions of years, this kind of shaped our outlook of night. But at any rate, the moon may not have physiological effects on humans, but it does have impact on creatures. Concerning the effects on Khajiit, the 2 and sometimes 3 moons have a clear impact. Due to this, it can be assumed that the Khajiit has its very genes influenced by the position of the moons. The idea of tidal forces must apply if this is the case, because during the gestation of the Khajiit, it would need to be cooking at the right time frame. It wouldn't just come out of the womb all the same and then magically be changed by the light of the moon. Although magic does exist, so, the only thing that can be assumed, at least from a more mundane perspective, is that gravitational forces affect the Khajiit as it gestates, and as the moons move around Nirn, this causes certain genes to be turned on and certain genes to be turned off. Because of this, the body is formed to be either quadrupedal or bipedal, large or small, heavy fur, or barely any at all. Of course, the moons, as stated, do have magical effects on the body, so Lord knows if I'm actually on the right track, but just from a perspective of at least me as a biologist, I'm more inclined to believe it's about the genes. So what do we actually see with your standard, typical Khajiit, now that we have literally covered their extensive changes? Well, starting with the feet, we can see that specifically these versions of Khajiits are flat-footed, meaning that they have plantigrade structuring of their legs. Other Khajiits are shown to have digitigrade, stemming from a more bestial positioning of the moon. Moving up the legs, depending on structure, they will either have knees like humans and elves, or like that of beasts. But believe it or not, digitigrade structuring may actually be better for hunting, but the plantigrade structure allows for them to wear regular armor, which is much less specialized. The overall shape of the Khajiit is much like that of a man or elf. Their coverings of fur are found over their entire bodies, again depending on the moon, but with playable Khajiits, they are found across the board. The main thing separating a Khajiit, however, is their natural offensive capabilities. Whereas a man, orc, or elf must punch when unarmed using blunt force, a Khajiit is capable of using claws. This natural advantage and strength really means that a Khajiit does not need a sword, axe, bow, or hammer. Instead, right out of the gate, they can utilize these claws to take down most animals and men they come across. Getting to the head of the Khajiit, we can still see their bestial ancestry, however. Starkly different from most other races besides Argonians, they possessed flattened nose of most cats, sharp, large canines, carnivorous teeth in general, furry faces, cat eyes, and large ears. Presumably due to the teeth, they can use these in combat if necessary. The eyes actually allow for a certain amount of night eye, suggesting that they have retained their tapetum lucidum, and their large ears, much like their ancestors, move and direct sound, allowing them to hear better than other races. Overall, it's not 100% known where the Khajiit come from, and as mysterious as the other versions, this highly adaptable and morphologically varying creature appears to be native to Tamriel along with the Argonians, but due to their ability to actually outright look like a Bosmer, this coincidence cannot be discounted as nature rarely repeats the same blueprint twice. Although that said, it's not really entirely unheard of. But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, leaving a like would be awesome, as this required so much research. If you liked it and aren't subbed, make sure you do what every other YouTuber under the sun tells you to do and hit that sub button. Although, who gets notified anymore really? So why does it matter? I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, and second channel links. On my second channel, I recently got a video up discussing phantom limb syndrome and why it exists. I would also like to thank some of my patrons real quick. I would like to do a huge shout out to It's Not a Spoon for remaining our astronaut. Thank you, sir. Next up, I want to thank our scientists, Skilt and Trey Windenall. Thanks to you as well, my guys. And next, I'd like to thank the rest of my patrons. During this time more so, your help goes a long way towards keeping this channel up and running. And you know, me actually living in a house and eating food and not out of a garbage can. So thank you. All right, guys, well, that does it for me. Continue to wash your hands, be smart, and adhere to the recommendations, and you will be okay. Thanks for watching, and I will see y'all in the next one.